Hey everybody, it's Jeff here once again with the Money Trekker podcast, and it is our weekly financial update with Tom Kemler with BK Wealth Consulting. This week we've got a lot of stuff because there was a lot of news, a lot of things going on. Some things were, that are kind of like whipping a dead horse, so we're really not going to cover, but really some interesting things and follow up on some of Tom's predictions earlier in the summer. First off, China has been involved with Taiwan more. Right, what Tom had been saying, and so we're going to do a little follow-up on that. We have to go through our obligatory shipping issue because this is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger story. We've been talking about it for almost a year now, but it's really starting to get out into the mainstream press. God knows what they've been doing, but we're on it. We're going to have an economic update. We're going to talk about the new movement of people out of COVID restricted states to other states that are a little bit more open and free and significantly less costly. So we're going to have a little bit of a talk on that. And the most interesting thing is something I didn't know about that Tom caught. So you're going to have to stay tuned to watch that. We'll see you back here in just a second. Hey everybody, welcome to the Money Trekker podcast, and I am on with my friend Tom Kemler. We're doing our weekly economic update and market update. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
Tremendous, Jeff. How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. I know we just kind of did a quick rundown before this, and lots of great stuff this week, and a few things I hadn't heard about or talked about. So why don't you kick us off? I know you wanted to cover something that happened about a week ago to one of the people that you feel was a great resource in the community or in the investment world.
Yes, sir. I am going to start off. Thank you for the handover, and I am going to share my screen. I'm going to start off with a bit of an obituary eulogy of sorts for Citigroup's chief market strategist, Tobias Levkovich. He died a week ago today. A lot of people didn't know about it until Monday. So he was, a lot of times we poke fun at the major wirehouses and where they can be wrong. But Tobias was one of the good ones. He'd been in the same position for 20 years. I had the privilege of attending, I think one, if not two, over the years, some of his presentations in person. And some of our viewers might remember that we've occasionally pulled up the Citigroup's Economic Surprise Index. And I think if Levkovich, if he didn't invent it, he certainly popularized it, because it was from him that I learned about this. So, it's terrible. He was exactly my age. It wasn't a health related; it was an accident, but so it was sudden. But still, one of the good guys, and a lot of people on Wall Street. There are not many good guys there, and he was one of the good ones, and so there's been a lot of positive eulogies. And in honor of Levkovich, I did pull the Economic Surprise Index to just show folks this week. And when we last showed this, as I remember, we had come down, it was right here, so it was a couple of months ago. But you can see that the momentum that we had after the COVID rebound, that we had slowly been dropping off, and we actually carried well below zero to some of the levels that are associated with really poor periods in the market. But we have in the last few weeks had a pretty good rebound. So And I think that'll anticipate some of the charts that I'll show later on. So again, my deepest condolences to the Levkovich's family and all of his colleagues. Great guy, and he's missed. And probably in quarters like mine, where the people at Wall Street don't even know who I am. So we're still going to pay our respects. So the next, this was from last week. We talked about how China had tried to frame its power problems as they were imposing these restrictions on clean air, pollution restrictions, and on the provinces, and it was all in the name of the Green New Deal and trying to to be greener and really appease the some of the much more liberal elements of world opinion, when in reality, and it fell apart within days, I mean, if not hours. In reality, they had a coal shortage in China for a couple of reasons. They had, because of COVID lockdowns, and when you talk about lockdowns in China, when they have a lockdown, they literally, they'll weld the doors shut in your apartment building and you can't leave. And so when they have periodically throughout the country, if they get an outbreak, they'll just shut everything down, and it has affected coal production. North Korea's usually been a coal exporter to China. They've had their own problems with exporting because of COVID. Nobody really knows how bad North Korea's COVID problem is, except, and Kim Jong-un says that they've never had a case of it. But all the evidence is to the contrary. Several other countries in the area around China have had their own production problems that are COVID related, particularly Malaysia. And Australia, who was willing to ship coal, the Chinese were upset with the Australians because the Australians have had the gall to stand up to the Chinese about the origins of the virus and what have you. So they had embargoed Australian coal. And so this week, after their power problems became so manifest and across the entire country, and it was obvious that it wasn't anything to do with emission restrictions, it was everything to do with them not having coal, they've had to back down, and they're buying coal on the world market, even though they had basically blackballed the Australians for months. And so this is just the power of the market coming back, and the Australians have been forced to be selling the coal on the cheap to the Indians, and so now they're getting a better price, and the
now they're raking the Chinese over the coals. That's awesome.
literally, yeah. So there's a couple other things about China, though, that while we're on the subject, this came out overnight, that this actually happened on Monday, but this is a nuclear powered sub, the USS Connecticut, was damaged. They have not released exactly how it's damaged, other than to say that the nuclear propulsion system is not damaged and it poses no threat. It is moved into a port for service, but it hit a quote unquote underwater object. And what's really interesting to me about that is that this object was in the South China Sea. And I don't know if it was a man-made object. I don't know if the Chinese had placed some things down there as like anti-submarine type things. But the fact is that as China has been much more belligerent lately, and we've been conducting these freedom of navigation, um, uh, various ships have been conducting freedom of navigation operations into the South China Sea. I don't think a submarine, that's kind of pushing freedom of navigation because it's underwater. So this inadvertently tells you how much pressure we've been putting on the Chinese behind the scenes. Of course, it's never a good idea to see that one of our nuclear-powered subs is laid up, because that's one less that we can have on station. But I think there's more to come out of this. I'm going to vow here to keep an eye on how things progress, because I'm really interested in understanding if this was something, just did they hit a rock, got too close to the bottom or too close to an underwater cliff, or are the Chinese actually placing some sort of obstacles in the South China Sea to impede free movement of free navigation? So this is kind of a big deal, and not many people heard of it.
Or some kind of drone or something like that under the water. And
the submersible drones are a thing. So I don't know if they know what they hit yet. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And this may all disappear behind a cloak of classified information, but I'm going to try to stay on top of this. The other thing, this was the Wall Street Journal on Monday. We've been talking about the threat to Taiwan ever since the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, made our international profile look extremely weak. And what was intriguing, and I just, this is the print edition, front page of the Journal. Obviously, folks can't read this down here, the actual text, but one of the things that I thought was interesting about it was that in the 3 days prior to this article appearing, the Chinese had sent 93 flights into the 93 military aircraft into the Taiwanese identification zone, as it's called. The Biden administration came out and said, you guys need to quit doing that. And the day after the Biden administration said that, the Chinese sent in another 56. So it lets you know exactly how much weight the Chinese have placed on hearing from the Biden administration. So I continue to believe that Taiwan is under a severe amount of military pressure from China, and I continue to believe that something involving one of those outlying islands is in the cards. A lot of people, I don't know where to put this, but a lot of people have wondered about, also on Monday, we had that Facebook outage, which I wasn't really going to cover, except that a lot of people don't believe that Facebook's explanation as to why that was. And people such as myself who believe that China would make a move on Taiwan, part of that move would be a massive cyber attack that would disable all sorts of websites and probably disable the entire internet to prevent the country from communicating internally and to sow confusion and to hamper any sort of defense that might be mounted. So whether or not that was the case, I don't know, but a lot of people don't believe what happened to Facebook was the official explanation.
Yeah, and there was, it was funny because my IT guy had sent out something that morning that was saying that there was, and this really didn't make as much press, but like the DNS servers, there was a lot of DNS servers offline that day, which that may have had an effect on Facebook. That DNS servers are where your URLs are at. So
well, that was what Facebook blamed it on, was the DNS system. But whether there was a deeper a deeper cause, I don't know, but
Yeah.
that was the official explanation. So, and they said it was internal, that somebody screwed up an update or something, but I can't
You
believe.
don't buy that one. You have redundancy, guys, so there's something else going on there.
Yeah. Anyway, so now we're into shipping. I saw this term, container-geddon.
Uh-oh.
Um,
When it gets up to the Geddon stuff,
it's
you know it's
again
never
now.
good.
So I had to include this, but we've been talking. Home Depot was the first, and then Dollar Tree, and now this is an article that shows that the number of companies that are chartering their own ships and not and trying to get out of the rest of the congestion is spreading. So you've got Costco and Target also joining in, and
apparently Amazon.
yeah, it looks like an Amazon, just like this one is all Amazon. But again here. Regular viewers will recall that we've been publicizing all of the accidents that have been happening in shipping between rogue waves and incredible weather that have swept thousands of containers off of ships, to sinkings and groundings, and so it's just when you're in the regular shipping business, you can have a few containers or even a few hundred containers on a ship that contains a few thousand, and if it goes down, you don't have all your eggs in one basket. When you charter your own ship and you have only your own stuff on it, it is literally all of your eggs are in that basket. So I think in their desperation, these companies are doing something that's pretty risky. And we'll see, if something happens to one of these ships, whether it's weather or mechanical or anything else, they've concentrated their risk, and they're really playing roulette here.
Well, yeah, and you put it on the USS Rust-Oleum here that's on the screen. My God. Jeez. As I was in a movie a long time ago, I think I could need a tetanus shot to look at that thing. So
yeah, I mean, you'd think if you're Amazon that you'd probably be able to charter a spiffier ship. But
I'm just surprised there isn't like a big Amazon across the side of the thing. So
well, that's the other thing though, and it's a good point, because all the frontline ships are already spoken for.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go get a charter and you're going to pull something that's that's not being utilized, you're going to get a second class ship, a ship that probably needs a good paint job and and maybe some more maintenance. I pulled this chart from Moody's just because we've been talking about supply chains, and I got to confess, I don't know how Moody's constructed this supply chain stress index, but what you can see, and what I think is actually kind of fascinating, is that the stress on supply chains, the trend from the least amount of stress in recent years was 5, 6, 7 years ago. This period from 2015 to 2016, we were already trending to be more stressed than normal, beginning a few years ago, and then of course you can see that it's just exploded in the last year. But to me, the interesting thing about this chart is this period here where we were probably already before COVID, we were showing signs of that the world's supply chains were already under stress, and that makes sense as to why it's become so catastrophic, because an already stressed system is going to do really, really poorly when you get a serious stressor. And this is when it broke right here.
Yeah.
So the biggest shipper in the world, Hapag-Lloyd, guy came out yesterday and says he thinks that this is it. This is peak problems right now. So we'll see. He also believes that the peak of the problems is in the United States. So this is definitely a headline and a date that I am going, and I've actually saved this headline with a file name that is the date. So I will be able to find it easily because I'm going to revisit this after a while just to see a guy who knows his business, you know, how good was this call? Mm-hmm. And we're starting to get some, we've been talking about second and third order effects. Well, here's another effect. We've been talking about how many container ships have been offshore of Long Beach and Los Angeles. And the fact that there were so many that all of the anchorage places had been taken up, and that there were a number of ships that were just drifting. And there was an oil spill that happened over the weekend, last weekend. And I have a series of slides here because it's become obvious that it was a ship's anchor of one of these container ships that was offshore, dragged its anchor. That anchor went across an oil pipeline and ruptured it. So this is a day or two later. You know, this is the worst oil spill offshore of California in 50 years. So kind of a big deal. Over 3,000 barrels of oil spilled. This is a headline of a podcast a guy did where he believes that this was the cause. Then the Coast Guard is starting to basically say, yeah, I think this theory is right. And then last but not least, this is the Coast Guard's Unified Command quantified things, and I hope people can read this, but I'll read it anyway. The San Pedro Bay pipeline was about 3.5 miles offshore was where this rupture was. So this anchor probably pulled close to a mile of this pipeline as far as 105 feet, and then put a 13-inch gash in it. And that is, and this was a 16-inch pipeline. So they don't know exactly who the ship was. Interestingly enough, the Coast Guard did come out, and Hapag-Lloyd, who was the suspect ship, was cleared earlier today. So the Hapag-Lloyd guy doesn't have to worry about his ship being the cause of it, but whoever is the cause of it, California is going to throw the book at them. I mean, they're going to have to pay a lot of money. So this is just, you know, it's more than just crazy to be looking at how many ships are offshore California and some of the effects that it's having on product shortages, inflation, and what have you. Now you're seeing that the damage to some of the infrastructure is a result of basically the damage that's been done to the supply chain. So last week I was talking about the flywheel spinning faster and faster, and this is another example of that, where instead of the problems, you know, dampening over time, like you throw a boulder into a pond and you see the waves are initially very big, but then slowly things, you know, calm down and settle out. In this case, what we're seeing is that we're not getting anything settling out, that there's second and third order effects that reinforce each other and cause even more chaos. You know, I thought that's very interesting that the pipeline was basically caused by the shipping problems.
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, I saw this. Kathy Wood is one of the, she's become in the last couple of years for her stance on cryptocurrencies and Tesla, and she's become kind of a very high profile money manager. ARC has a lot of money. They have a lot of ETFs. She's been a Tesla bull, a crypto bull. And she's moving to Florida, leaving Wall Street. And this is just another example of the really, I mean, the main industry in Wall Street is I mean, the main industry in New York in terms of money that gets generated is Wall Street. And we're seeing a lot of the major brokerage firms have been putting more and more people in various parts of the country. I can say here, living in Austin, there's a lot more financial. Our financial community has tripled over the last 20 years. Major efforts have been done up into Dallas. Salt Lake City has seen an explosion of the financial industry. Denver. Florida as well, and you're seeing some high-profile people. Carl Icahn moved to Florida, I think, about 2 years ago, multi-billionaire. So you're seeing some of these luminary names are going down there. When they go down, they're taking their whole firm. I mean, she's closing her headquarters. Carl Icahn let some people remain in the Connecticut area, I think. But, they're going down there for taxes. They're going down there for freedom. And they're going down there because technologically, you don't need to be, you can be where you want and still communicate as much as you want to. So this is a trend that, New York is going to lose a congressional seat because of the census, people leaving the state. California is losing a seat in the Congress as well. Texas is picking up 2 seats. So, people are moving away from these high tax, low freedom areas, and they're moving to low tax, high freedom areas. And this is just another example of that. I did have a few. I'm just going to breeze through. I know we're into the, but generally speaking, a lot of the stuff this week was pretty positive. Factory orders came in above the range. The prior number was revised higher, and the actual number came in above consensus. This is a positive number in a way. I mean, the international trade number, our trade deficit was bigger than expected, which just shows that how many goods we're sucking in, despite all of the port problems. We're still have such a demand for imported goods that we're importing much more than is expected. ISM services number came in really strong. The prior number was really strong, and folks thought it would moderate, and instead it actually got even a little stronger. And then this month with the employment report, I thought was fascinating because last month we talked about how ADP had a number that was really kind of low. The ADP report comes out usually 2 days on the Wednesday before the official U.S. employment report. And just to remind some folks, ADP is a major payroll processor. In fact, ADP processes so much of all of the paychecks at so many companies across the country that they basically have enough data for them to estimate themselves as to what's going on with the United States. And so I always find it interesting when they're kind of at odds with what happens in the States. For over a long period of time, the ADP number is going to track the number for the United States. What's interesting is that last month, which was August, the August report, the ADP number was 374,000, and we had that huge report on Wall Street. I think it was close to 1,950,000 or something, really large. Although we did kind of downplay it because it was a lot of bartenders and waitresses that went back to work. Well, ADP thought that this month would be stronger, and instead what we got was weaker. So we actually got a weaker number than expected. The non-farm payrolls number, actually, this is 2 week months in a row. The really strong one with the service jobs was July. So I got this inventory number stuck in the middle there, and I apologize about that. But anyway, so the ADP number has overestimated what actually happened in the economy.
Are you hearing any explanation why usually they're somewhat in lockstep. I mean, they can be a little bit more rosy in some cases, but I've really not seen them be that far off from each other.
Well, one of the things I find interesting, this third line, private payrolls, is going to be, this isn't so bad. The private payrolls numbers at the bottom of the range, but it didn't miss like the other. And so what this tells me is that a lot of these jobs that disappeared were government jobs.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, by the way.
No, it's not. And you wonder, I mean, like, did a lot of people leave the government because of these vaccine mandates? I mean, some of the earliest mandates were from government bodies, not only the federal government, but a lot of the states. So
are we seeing, because it was New York was the first one that had the major stuff, where it was like, okay, your hospital employees or your, teachers and stuff like that, if you didn't have the vaccine, you were pretty much on the street. So
yeah, but teachers would be government, but hospital employees wouldn't be. But I'm talking about like, in the bureaucracy. Like,
sure.
So, that those mandates came down in August. And so I can see where, anyway, the difference here, if you just do, a rough difference between the private payrolls and non-farm payrolls, it's about 120,000, over all of the 50 state governments and over all of the federal government and some of the local governments, particularly in really blue states. I can see it. So the private payrolls number wasn't horrible, but also interesting though, it was the unemployment rate went down a lot, even without a lot of jobs, which tells you that a lot of people just left the labor force. And is that people that were in the government said, I'll just retire? I don't know. Participation rate went down. This is a kind of report that I think this next month, this prior revised column is going to be a lot different than these numbers, because the average work week went up, which normally you see in really strong reports. And like the unemployment rate went down 0.4%. So you would think that these numbers were huge, and they weren't. Our average hourly earnings were kind of okay. So I kind of think, as I ruminate on this, that this shows that there were a lot of government employees that left their employment in the last month, and the question is, was that due to the vaccine mandates, and how's that going to look going forward, because the government mandates were first, and that includes the military, by the way. So the military folks could be leaving.
But that's not one of those things you can just go, well, I'm going to quit now. I mean, it's you've got a contract with them for most cases. So I'd venture to say it's more of the in-government folks. And I mean, you're seeing police officers shedding off like crazy.
Yeah.
All these police departments too. I mean, I saw something that literally every single major police department in the country, like the big cities, each of them were down like 12 to 15% on the cops alone.
Yeah, and in Austin, we had a case
off.
where they were actually sending letters with five offers of $5,000 for people that police officers that quit Austin in the past year, offering them $5,000 to come back and come back at a higher rate, and nobody took the deal. Nobody took the deal.
This is not a good sign. Yeah.
No, but they're admitting basically that this new police chief that they hired, which nobody seems to like, or at least the rank and file don't like him. That defund the police was a mistake. Well, duh.
Well, yeah, amazing.
Last but not least, we've been talking about inventories, and with all of the problems and all of the throughput and everything else, I just find it kind of interesting that we beefed up inventories in August. Preliminary number, but kind of crazy. So enough stuff is getting through, even through Container-Geddon, as we can call it now. And
it's going to be interesting to see when companies, and I'm guessing they're already there at this point, are going to start to go, you know what, it's way better to find an American manufacturer, or Canadian or Mexican or something like that, and just get rid of the whole container side. I think the Mexican side,
right
the challenge,
This is a strong number.
Yeah.
I mean, the onshoring. I mean, if we had a federal government that was actually friendly to business, this would be the biggest boon for American business that I would have probably seen in my life. Was that the onshoring, all of the pressure for these far-flung supply chains and the problems, the delays, and the extra costs and everything else are just screaming out to be solved by onshoring production. And we have absolutely nobody there to catch the ball. I mean, it's right there. It's teed up. All we'd have to do is catch it, and we're doing the opposite. We're talking about increasing the corporate tax rate, and
Well, I think the challenge that we face, even with Mexico, I call this the Topo Chico effect. That is the one beverage that is actually comes directly from Mexico. It's not, it's not done anywhere else. And you can see when we have these big surges at the border, it must affect the, even trying to get across the border, trucks and things like that, because you go through these huge surges of Topo Chico where there's like none, and then there's a whole bunch, and then there's none, and so
it's a popular drink. I don't drink Topo Chico.
Once again, Jeff's theories of what's in the grocery store. That's how I factor things in.
Which all of which now leads us to the most interesting thing, and to me the most interesting thing is not only there's a volcano that's going off in on the island of La Palma, which is part of the Canary Islands. It started erupting on September the 19th, and overnight, first of all, there's a YouTube channel that you can go to. This is a screenshot of the YouTube channel where it's a live feed, and you could just tune in, and it's got sound, and then there's a little chat room on the side, and there's a number of hardcore multi-chatters that are talking about what the volcano's doing. I've had it as kind of a screensaver. I've just had it on one of my browser tabs on my computer for over a week. Most of the time I keep the sound muted, but every now and then I turn the sound on, and I saw one person posted on their chat that they thought it was a much better white noise machine for sleeping than their own white noise machine. um,
You have ocean, rainforest, volcano. Yeah, it just doesn't seem very calming to me. But
well, it's a steady roar.
okay.
And one of the things, again, there's a lot of things that are interesting about volcanoes. This one, it reached a new intensity overnight. About 14 hours ago, there was a major development that a lot of people thought it knocked out it blackened the air so completely that people thought that the camera was knocked offline, but it didn't do anything for the noise. And then after about half an hour or so, the ultra black smoke and dust started, and ash started to clear. But I just rewinding a little bit, I think it's fascinating in this day and age that when something like this starts happening, that there's a YouTube channel on it. That there's a live feed. Somebody has taken the time to set up a YouTube channel. They've got a camera on the scene, and you can watch the volcano whenever you want. So this is where it is.
There are people that have a channel where they just unpack gifts and people watch it. So why would you not think there would be a volcano?
This is way more interesting than unpacking gifts. And I have to say this: there were two vents opened, and then that big explosion overnight, which was coincided with the largest earthquake related to this eruption since it began. Opened up two more vents. So now there's basically 4 pots boiling on this thing. And it erupted for over 2 weeks before the lava started to make its way into the sea. And the lava has now been moving into the ocean and actually expanding this island quite a bit over the past 3 or 4 days. And so it's kind of fascinating to see. This channel isn't static. Occasionally they've got drone shots. In this case, they have a picture in a picture. So it's really pretty cool. To me, the most interesting thing. So,
well, I thought it was because I hadn't even heard of it, so it definitely was the most interesting thing for me today.
Yeah, volcanoes are crazy, and this one was, they have not completely evacuated this island either. It's the northwesternmost island in the Canary Islands, which is off the coast of Spain, really more off the coast of Morocco. Out into the Atlantic Ocean to the west of the Straits of Gibraltar that go into the Mediterranean. History buffs will remember that the Canary Islands and the Azores were used by all sorts of explorers as places to, you could sail a fair amount before you would go off the end of the earth. You would stop in the Azores or the Canary Islands and kind of replenish your supplies before going across the Atlantic Ocean. Columbus Day is Monday, so I'm pretty sure Columbus stopped in the Canary Islands. And so this is the northwesternmost Canary Island, and there's a number of volcanoes that are in the Canaries. This one's obviously active. It's the last time this volcano had erupted was 50 years ago, and this eruption is apparently far more strong and pervasive than the one that had happened a long time ago. So.
Ring of fire of the Atlantic, so you're probably going to see something happening up in Iceland before it's all over with, because that typically happens.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but it's a perfect segue. If you go to YouTube, there is also a live Iceland channel of a volcano erupting.
Of course there is. Well, Tom, thank you so much for all that. Great, most interesting thing. Great show. I really enjoyed a lot of the little things, how they're all knitted together. And it's, interesting to see all the stuff that we're talking about, or we've been talking about with China, and all that's starting to come into fruition. So we've been ahead of the game on a lot of this. So thank you. I appreciate you coming on as always.
You're welcome.
And thanks, folks. We appreciate you being on. I challenge you. We're going to be off for a week, and I challenge you to get us a bunch of questions. I think Tom has created a lot of little buzz here, and we would love to get a little bit of more feedback from you, or things that you're interested in. So wherever you're watching this or listening to it, make sure that you pop a question in there, because we get those, and we'll put them on a new show coming up. So thanks a lot. We appreciate it. We will see you back here in 2 weeks.